Catch Critic, reviewing for your pleasure.
Hey everybody, welcome to Catch Critic, where we review and discuss for your pleasure. I'm Ignacy, and I'm joined by my trusty companion, Mr. H.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be discussing Tower of God, the anime series. Now, we are both Webtoons readers, and we think we have a lot to add to this discussion. So sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Enjoy, everyone.
Okay, so let's get into it. Animation style. I know that it was a bit controversial at first, but I liked it. I think it was very true to what the webtoon had, and I know people who were against it that are now pretty much accepting it.
Yeah, so with the visuals, I spent a bit of time online when the anime was first airing, through Reddit pages and just the overall Tower of God community, and it was a bit divisive for anime onlys who have never read the webtoon itself. However, I think the style grew on people. It's pretty accurate to the webtoon style of art, so I think people who have been reading the series for a while or started reading prior to the anime's launch were pretty accepting of the visuals from the onset.
Yeah, but I also think that one of the biggest things, and this is probably why it was from the beginning because it's the first episode, is the Shinsu. So for both webtoon readers and anime like onlys, the Shinsu looks weird. So if you're an anime only, you're like, okay, it's water, it's everywhere, but it's water in that situation. And then if you're only a reader, or you're a reader and coming into the anime, you look at it and you go, I don't remember it being so thick as water. I remember it being more like it's everywhere, but sometimes it's more concentrated based on where it is. And I was a little annoyed with it at first, but I didn't care that much. I was like, this isn't a make it or break it thing for me. And later I was okay with it. It's really only in that scene in the very beginning when it's in the cage with the silver eel. And then later with Lero Rowe when he pushes everyone back. At first I was like, okay, that's a little watery looking. And he refers to it as water when in the webtoon he refers to it as allows us to like drink water or something. Like it's a little more vague as to what it is. It just kind of like is the life source of the tower. But in the anime, it's very like it's water.
So I definitely agree with that in some respects. In the anime, it's certainly displayed only as water. In the webtoon, it's a bit more ambiguous as to what the substance is. It almost is more aura-like than purely water. There are a lot of indications that it's liquid-esque and water-like, but I wouldn't say off the bat. Later on in the series, it definitely is represented more like water, but earlier on, I didn't get that impression, but it really hits you as it's
you mean from the
special
webtoon?
Kind of from the webtoon, yes.
Yeah, okay.
From early on in the webtoon, it doesn't hit you as this is just water, it's some sort of liquid or aura, but in the anime, it's clearly some form of water.
Yeah, I think in the anime it's so visual when you see it that it becomes a bigger deal to you trying to understand it, when in the webtoon you're just told about it. And then if I assume if you're watching the anime or you read it, you probably are thinking like, okay, Shinsu, this is ki, this is chakra, this is whatever you want to call it, this universe's version of that, and that's pretty accurate. So if you're just a anime viewer and you want to think about it, I think that's the like best way to think about it, not to like overthink it and be like it's water and not water. It's just if you watch Dragon Ball Z or something, it's ki. If you watch Naruto, it's chakra. It's all that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's just a resource to manage powers, pretty much. It's the ki, the chakra, the nen, whatever anime that you've previously been into, if you were into one. It's really just the driving force of power behind people within the tower.
Yeah, okay. So for that, I'm okay with now. I was a little put away with at the beginning.
It bothered me for about a second, but I really got over it. Later on, there were some, and we'll get to that, there were some visual representations of Shinsu that they didn't do in the manhwa that I actually thought were really clever and made interesting visuals and storytelling.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way with that, where I can specifically think of one major instance where they used Shinsu that was there that I didn't like at all, and I will get to. And that's I wanted during the Crown game. and I think some readers, if you read it, you definitely know what I'm thinking about.
Oh well, I think I now know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna have to agree with that.
Okay.
But that was not the instance I was thinking of.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get to that later. Overall, I like the art style. I think it's good. I think it reflects so if you've read it, you would know that there are 3 seasons in the reading. It's currently on the 3rd season. The first season is capable of being a 1-season anime. The second season, I'm going to say at least 3 or 4 is going to be needed to do all of it. And the art style changes. Like, it's kind of like you've seen that they show a cut of Bam being older at the end of the finale. And so we know, for anime viewers, we know that there's going to be a time skip. Bam is going to be slightly older. We're not told how much. It just like seems taller and his hair is longer. From that thing, it looks like the art style, like they've even hinted that it's going to change a little bit. It's going to be a little more sophisticated. So maybe it'll change, because the art style does change from the season 1 and season 2 in the webtoon. So I assume that'll be reflected in the show. But overall, I like the art style to reflect the comic book nature.
So I'm also gonna quickly comment on this. I really enjoyed from the onset how true to the manhwa, to the webtoon, the art style was. At first I was hoping for like a more modern approach to animation and art, but it's really true to what the webtoon looks like. There's a few points and characters that are a little bit upgraded art wise, but between seasons 1 and 2, there is a dramatic shift in animation. I wonder how dramatic they're going to make that transition in the anime. But for season 1, they really stuck to the original art, which I personally appreciate. And as far as season 1 being contained within one season of anime, I think it's true. Season 1 is definitely infinitely shorter than season 2. And it can be held within one season, though I think it would have benefited from an additional episode or 2. The overall season that we got, season 2 will probably have to fit into more than one season.
Yeah, and we'll get into the pacing a little bit more, but right now I want to shift gears to the music and the voice acting. So for music, again, I was happy. I liked it. Had an Akira, Ghost in the Shell vibe. And Tower of God is supposed to be a mysterious place and also like grand and huge, especially in the beginning when you're seeing it through Bam's eyes. Just like Bam, the viewer doesn't have any idea of what's going on or what the tower is. So having this cool, mysterious score, like again with like Ghost in the Shell kind of vibes, I was really happy with.
Yeah, that choir-esque score that keeps occurring throughout the season, and just overall, there's never a moment where the music felt out of tune with what was happening in the scene. It was really just, I think, great. Like I really can't think of a moment where the music took me out of it, or if anything, it made me more intrigued. I knew where the story was going, but the grandiose nature of some of the music they were using, the high stakes moments really felt even more high stakes than they did in the webtoon in some sense. And just while we're on the topic of music, what did you think about the intro?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that. I thought the intro was really good. So it's a little long for my taste, but like in terms of anime, I think it's probably short, but I definitely thought it was okay. Like it was well done, and they kind of like tried to make it more visual instead of like, I don't know, I'm just gonna reference like the One Piece intro I hate more than anything. It's so long and obnoxious. But Tower of God is just, I thought was well done. I know a lot of people who like the intro song, and then I thought the credit song was even better. Like I really enjoyed the credit song.
So I have very much the same opinions on this. The intro was great. I think the credits song was a little bit better. I really liked the fact that the intro was just more, not necessarily foreshadowy. It didn't give anything away. It really just felt about the emotions Bam was feeling throughout the season, and like him wandering through the dust and really losing sight of himself at certain moments. It was more metaphorical than showing you what's going to happen, as in like some, as you talked about before, some One Piece intros just show you like what fights are going to happen. And this didn't give anything away, and giving things away in Tower of God, getting rid of the mystery would really ruin some aspects of the storytelling. So I appreciated it both visually, the intro, and through the music itself.
I was going to say that if they did anything, they kind of removed some mystery. Like, we'll get to that later, but the Tower of God, for those of you who haven't read, it's like many, many characters with many not random, but like small little details that could potentially come back at any moment. We never know. And you'll see that later. Like everything that's happened in this first season, very establishing. It's setting the stage. So like if Tower of God started at season 2, this is like, it's like a very good prequel. But
and just to quickly touch on that, there's almost no such thing as a throwaway character in Tower of God. Every character that has a name has a set purpose, and changing those around could be a bit complicating later down the line, and we'll talk about how that happens here and there. But overall, just the foreshadowing and if a character is mentioned at some point and you haven't seen them, you will see them at some point. There's no dropped plot lines per se.
Yeah, people exist. It's not a vacuum. And I guess that brings us to voice acting. And again, like it was weird because a lot of the times it's like, this is what I always thought they sounded like, and now I can't not hear them in their voice acting. Right. Rock is exactly how I thought he would sound. Same with Kun.
I have to say,
I hope Bam's voice like grows with the way that he grows as a character.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely thought like, okay, this is a great little like innocent kid voice for Bam.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel sounded like I thought she'd sound. Maybe I hope her voice changes with her development as well. And the only voice that comes to mind is something that I dislike, which I'm now okay with, was Hidan. They call him the caretaker. I think in the webtoon he's just called like the original administrator. Like he's the oldest administrator in the tower.
Yes. The guardian of the first floor of the tower.
Yeah, so like it's essentially the same thing. So there's no real issue with that. It might just be a translation thing. And his voice, if anyone watches anime, is the same voice as Jiraiya from Naruto. And I think maybe in the beginning that threw me off because like Hidan's supposed to be like this like very mysterious, cunning kind of character. And like I guess when I hear Jiraiya's voice, I'm kind of like, this guy's a pervert. Like I don't know. And I watched it again, and I'm like, no, it's not bad. I think it's fine. Like if you didn't have that like hang up like me, I think it works fine. I think the issues that I have more with it is the dialogue changes to what he says. I think he's very important, even though he's like only in the first chapter or the first couple of chapters in the first episode. But the things that he tells Bam like come back, and especially you see in the finale, he was plotting more things. So in terms of his voice, yeah.
Okay, and now touching upon Hidan really quickly, his voice acting, him being Jiraiya, was a little jarring, I guess. I figured he'd have more of like that a smooth voice, just like a low tone, more scheming-esque voice. It didn't bother me too much. I think they really wanted a big name voice actor out the gate, someone that's immediately recognizable. It didn't bother me too much. If I was to reassign that voice actor somewhere, maybe I'd give him to the administrator of the floor of tests, the giant fish. But apart from that, the voice acting was really on point. Kun, Rock, and Dorsey, Bam, all the key characters, Yuri, really sounded how I imagined them. Anak, particularly, yes, Anak was actually amazing. Paracule, fantastic.
Revolution.
I think Evan's voice was a little deep for what I thought it was going to be, but
I remember
it was
him
nothing.
being really whiny in the first episode. Like he was shouting a lot more. While like in the webtoon, he's much more calm and collected.
Yeah, some personality traits of certain characters were definitely highlighted a bit too much, I think. But that's more for the general discussion than the voice acting, I think. I'm trying to think if there was any voices that really bothered me. But overall, I think they were all great. Like Ren's voice actor.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the person who played Ren, and for those of you who can't remember, he's the guy in like the sheep costume who's impersonating that person who's supposed to be named Yuga, but he's one of the Royal Enforcement Division, Red. So
he was also the Shinsu test.
The wave controller
moderator.
test.
The wave controller. Thank you.
Okay.
But outside of Rock, he might have been the best. Like, I really did. He's not the most important character per se, but yeah, he did what that character needed to do. He needed to be creepy. He needed to be a little mysterious and like have fun in a sadistic, twisted kind of way. And
he has that ecstasy moment when he lets the fish out. And for everyone who has not read it, yes, that is scene for scene what happens.
That was not one of the additions. That was scene for scene.
So overall voice acting good. So I think now we can like get into the meat of it. What everyone really wants is our criticisms. And don't worry, I'll say before all this, I thought the season was really good. I was very, very worried, but obviously we have some issues. But overall, I think the season was really good and successful, and everyone who I know who's watched it enjoyed it. And the two of us really are the only ones who have read the webtoon in our friend group. So everyone that we've shown the show to has only the show, and the more they watch it, the better they think of it. So I'm really excited about that. I was worried that it just wouldn't be popular because I think the plot is so good and different from other animes that you see where like the plot is very predictable. There's always like very linear power growth, like all these kinds of things that I think Tower of God shies away from. Obviously, they have tropes that they can't get away from. That's just tropes in storytelling. But in overall, like tropes in anime, like they're not afraid. You saw that the season 1 finale twist, I think if you were watching it for the first time, when I was reading it, I did not expect that at all. I was like, is he dead? Like, I did not know. And I think that overall it was very good. But to get into it right now with changes, because I do have some criticisms. I know we both do. I think my major criticisms are with episode 1. Would you say that that's also your most criticized episode?
I would say it's my most criticized episode, but I would not say the issues in episode 1 are my major issues. My major issues revolve around a certain character and how she was handled.
Oh, really? She? I thought you were going to say
yeah.
he.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah, there's also a male character. Yeah.
So right from I just think episode 1 was big because it's like establishing, and I was very worried that people would watch the first episode and be like, "Oh, I'm not interested. It's too confusing. It's very jarring."
So the most concerned I was for the anime was after the release of episode 1, because there's a lot of info dropped there, and it goes very fast. And there were scenes that were cut that explained some of the happenings in the episode. So as the season went on, I felt more reassured, but after episode 1, I was the most nervous.
Yeah, so like I took some notes. So here, I thought that they could have ended the episode as soon as Bam arrives at the floor of test, the second floor. They did a little bit more to like, I guess the thought behind it was to introduce Rock and Kun as characters. I don't know if that was super necessary because you don't even know if they're important or not. It's kind of like a looking back thing, like, oh, they saw at the end of the episode, so it's important. But they could have easily been like just adversaries in the moment. If you're only watching it for the first time, you don't know.
So I just, before we continue on, I want to say that with what you just said, that they could have ended the episode there. I think they made certain choices on how to end certain episodes and exclude certain scenes based on the episode count they were given. I think there was 12 or 13 episodes. I can't remember exactly which number it was, but I think the season overall would have benefited from at least one more episode so they could afford to squeeze in some more scenes and end things more tightly. I think ending episode 1 once he gets to floor 2 with the open plains kill certain amount of regulars test would have been the better way to go about it. They definitely ended it that way because they wanted to introduce Rock and Kun, but I don't know if that was necessary.
Yeah, and they did cut some small things throughout the season that I would have liked to have seen, and then they added some things that I didn't think were that useful.
But they did add some stuff that was very interesting.
That's true. There was some adding stuff that I liked, but I think you'll see when we get to the floor of test, when I'll talk about that. But right now,
yes.
I want to talk about a big cut in the very beginning So when Bam, for those of you who haven't read, when Bam gets to the first floor and he's with Hedon is much more sly. He doesn't know, or like he's pretending that he doesn't know of Rachel, and he doesn't know Bam's name. That's a big thing. Is like maybe he did know it, but he was pretending not to. But in the webtoon, he asks what Bam's name is, and then Bam tells him. And I don't think it's ever said in the season, but Bam's real name is the 25th Night, and in Korean, Night is Bam. So like in Japanese, I think that's Yoru or whatever they're calling it. But when we read it, so when we're reading it, they're just saying Bam. But the 25th Night is important, and he says that to a lot of people throughout the first season when they ask him what his full name is, and they're like, it just adds to like the mystery. He's a very mysterious being. It's all surrounding this irregular status that it becomes more apparent, and I'll talk about that when they remove kind of the other irregulars. So while this is happening, we then cut in the webtoon. We cut to Yuri and Evan approaching and talking about how an irregular has entered the tower. We don't know how they learned about this. It just might be something that Evan's a very high-class guide. You learn that in season 1, so this isn't a spoiler, that he is the chief guide for the Jihad family. So it wouldn't be weird that he would know these things. They're talking about the irregular. They're mentioning the other irregulars that kind of don't get mentioned. There's several scenes where irregulars get mentioned. It's this one, and then later with Lee Ro when Bam's having that conversation with him while the others are trying to break through the Shinsu barrier. And they mention the names of the irregulars, which are, for those of you who haven't read it, is Phantom Minim, Enryu, and Uruk Mazino. And like Phantom Minim, like maybe he'll be like, we don't know. They're all very like, we don't know how important anyone is or isn't. But I think it's important to mention their names. And
it is, because it's one of the things we alluded to earlier that's very important about Tower of God, similar to later chapters in One Piece, is foreshadowing and world building are essential. The world of Tower of God is huge, and things mentioned in season 1 play into season 2 and 3, and those are hundreds and hundreds of chapters later. So even just name dropping someone that you might not see for 3 years anime time is important. It sets the world. It makes things seem alive outside of where our main character is.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That if someone's name is mentioned, like that'll happen like throughout Tower of God. You always have to be like, someone's name is mentioned, and then just like it could be one moment, and then way down the line, it's like, hey, I'm that person, and you're like, you just got to be ready for it. And I just thought like the naming of the irregulars like established this universe of like who is and who isn't a irregular. And I went back and I read some, and Lero Ro learns that the blonde-haired test administrator, for those, he has a strange name, he learns that Rachel is an irregular before he learns that Bam is, even though he suspects Bam is based on like Bam's pretty obvious when he asks, can you tell me about irregulars, is the first thing he wants to know.
So just to briefly touch up upon what was mentioned earlier, the scene with Evan and Yuri talking about irregulars happens about right before she drop kicks Bam in the anime. That scene where she is introduced in the anime had a scene right before it where they're traveling to get to Bam. They're traveling to get to the first floor of the tower, not even the first floor, the entrance of the tower where Bam is.
No, it's the first floor.
Okay, so it's the first floor. They're traveling down to that first floor, and they're having this discussion along the way saying, oh, a new irregular has entered, and this scene really helps introduce you to Yuri in a less abrupt way than the anime did. She just fell out of the sky out of nowhere and hit Bam in the face, and then, oh, here's this new character. But in the anime, you had a back and forth with another character, Evan, and it really just it gave her more of a purpose. It feels like you knew what Yuri was kind of a little bit after when she was helping Bam out. In the anime, it's like, oh, she's just helping this kid because she happened to be there.
Yeah, it was very jarring. It was one of those scenes I was afraid, okay, this is just such an abrupt entrance, and it's never explained why she was there.
Yeah.
But in the webtoon, you know why she's there. It's not a mystery.
She's seeking Bam out. She knows he's here, and they're going there for a purpose. And that was the reason why episode 1 concerned me so much. It was just so abrupt how she entered, and Yuri's motivation for helping Bam is not it's mostly known to the readers, but it's not fully explained, and it's really a driving force for her character, and she is an important character. So
and they talk about it a little more in the webtoon, is that so irregulars are normally extremely strong, and that gets mentioned in the anime too, but in the webtoon it's way more like focused that irregulars are extremely strong, and Bam has this status, and it's like a motif of being an irregular among irregulars. So he is weak. And then Rachel will have that status too, but they're very strange. Like Bam is weak, but he has this weird ability of attracting people. They mention he's very charismatic without trying to be, and as you see, there's more to him than meets the eyes. Like if you watch the whole season, you'll know that he does some strange things with Jinsu. He has clearly more than he understands about himself. But
I also just
wanting
want to touch
see
on
irregulars. Let me just finish this point, because her wanting
Absolutely.
to see irregular, like because of their being strange, is a very reasonable thing for someone of her status and power to be able to do, and taking that away and having her randomly appear out of nowhere, especially on the first floor, and like I feel like that, like maybe they'll come back to it later. I thought they would do like a little flashback in the second episode to that, and I don't see them doing that in season 2 unless she's thinking about him.
So I just wanted to quickly mention there was a issue on Crunchyroll's end when the anime first came out. I think it was for the first 2 episodes, actually, not just the first episode, where the subtitles improperly labeled irregulars as non-regulars. So while that doesn't seem super important for webtoon readers who have been reading this for years, it was majorly jarring, and it just added a bit confusion. Like there's this regular and non-regular, now it's an irregular. What happened to the non-regular? And it was just added to the confusion in a scene that really should have introduced this thing that Bam is, that is super important. Like it plays into every plot line in the webtoon. So
Yeah,
just getting a word that integral to the plot wrong in the subtitles in the first episode or 2 was a huge mistake.
And Bam also, besides being an irregular, has a mysterious background. No one knows anything about him. So not only is he's an irregular, he doesn't even understand the concept, just like the viewer. He doesn't see why it matters, and you slowly learn why it's a big deal, especially like later it'll just become a bigger plot line. And right now it's very establishing. And just having this scene, and I also want to talk about how in the scene with Yuri, as soon as they arrive, they're just like, he can't understand us. Here's a pocket. What's a pocket? And they're just like, so now you have these 2 characters you have no idea what they are, and all of a sudden they're giving you like this explanation of a pocket really quickly. In the webtoon, they yell at Hidan for not giving Bam a pocket because it's his job to do it, and it's just another suspicious thing. And Yuri becomes more suspicious of Hidan.
So can I just jump in here really quick?
Yeah, sure.
So basically the major issue with cutting out that scene at the beginning with Yuri and Evan talking on their way to Bam is it made the 2 characters exposition. That's all they really served as. They introduced the pocket and terms that the viewers had never heard about. They didn't feel like their own characters in the story with their own purposes and goals in mind. They really just came to serve as, let me explain some things to you. Let me just introduce the concept of pocket. They didn't feel natural in the world.
Yeah,
so I think that was my main problem.
It definitely looked more like, hey, we're here to help you. What's going on? And then they're also annoyed. While when you give the backstory of they had all these high hopes for what Bam was going to be, and then we're a little disappointed, it's like they're just like a little like, oh, okay, we'll help him out. He's an irregular. We came all this way. And then Yuri says that she likes the way Bam looks, which becomes like a running theme of Bam being slightly handsome but not really caring about it, which is just like that's a usual anime trope, just the main character being decently attractive but not caring. So Bam runs in to take the first test, and he's kind of in the show immediately eaten by the eel. In the webtoon, he's kind of just standing there, and Yuri's kind of shouting, what are you doing? And Evan's thinking in his head, like, does he actually know the answer to this test? Because he didn't even tell him, because he didn't think that he would be able to sit there and wait to be eaten, even if he knew. So that's kind of similar to the show, but I just thought he was eaten like so instantaneously
He was sorry. He was definitely a bit more hesitant to jump into the tank in the webtoon than he was in the anime. It was a little slower, but that's something I think for the sake of time that they probably just could cut.
Yeah, they cut it down. I mean, he was a little more adamant. So like a little difference that shows that he was courageous was he denies Yuri's Black March in the webtoon at first when he learns how precious, and she's like, "Are you out of your mind? This is one of the strongest weapons in this entire world." And he's like, "Oh, okay, fine." But in the show, he just takes it. So I thought that was something I didn't like being removed, but it's not the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah, they definitely placed.
Yeah.
Sorry, they definitely placed more of an emphasis on how powerful the Black March is in the webtoon, a little bit more how special it is. It isn't this everyday thing. It's one of a kind and beyond rare. So it put the importance on the Black March and Yuri lending it to someone a little bit more value in the webtoon opposed to the anime. But again, for time's sake, that was definitely something that could have been cut without losing too much value.
And then we see it later, which we're going to get to on the floor of Test, the first part of that. He tells Kun like what it is and who gave it to him. But in the webtoon, he actually doesn't tell Kun, and Kun kind of backs off about it. I thought that was something that I didn't like that they changed. But getting back to finishing this test, let's just finish this before we get to the floor of Test. Everything's pretty much the same, and I liked it. It definitely... He when he's shouting for it to break, and then it shows him like breaking a rock in his cave. That was added, and I like that because they just move things around because that's accurate. They just moved it during that, and I thought it built suspense. What I didn't like is after everything goes down and he summons the Black March, and then he's going to the next test. They have the Black March narrating things to him, talking to him, telling him that he hasn't seen Rachel in a while. That never happens. The Black March could not care less about Bam's personal issues. What happens is he has that flashback that they kind of showed during the test of him meeting Rachel for the first time and him like wanting to see her again. There's also something that like I think we need to address, and you'll remember this, is there's a panel in the webtoon during that flashback when he's moving between the tests of Rachel having her hair pulled by a mysterious stranger. And for those who have read the webtoon, that's like a big... Even today is still, who's that person pulling Rachel's hair? How come Bam's never thought of anyone else but Rachel? It's like it's a huge mystery, and I don't know if the author asked them to remove it or they just didn't think it was as important because it's never mentioned. But what do you think about that? The hair pulling?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a big mystery. That's what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where there's these subtle moments or name drops that really can impact the story going on later down the line. So this is just like a little seed that was planted in one of the first chapters that I think is going to build into something much more deep and meaningful for Rachel's character, who is very mysterious in both the anime and the webtoon. Her motivations, while clear at some points, are murky at best at some others, and that's definitely one of the first mysteries. So omitting that is questionable. I do wonder if that was the author's intention or if the people in charge of the adaptation really just saw it as this one-off moment that we need time and this isn't important, this will confuse people, let's skip it and we can do it later down the line if we need to do it.
I agree, but to give them credit, they did add Rachel like talking in like when they're doing the whole Rachel episode in the twist. They talk about how like Rachel wants to be the hero and all these things. That wasn't done in the webtoon, which I think is accurate to what she wants, but was not done in the webtoon, was added to the anime, does kind of give us a bigger picture of who Rachel is and what she wants. They kind of made her a more whole character, I thought, at least in the first season. That might have been like the author now in hindsight knowing what he's going to do.
That's certainly true. Rachel's motivations are made much more clear throughout the whole season 1 than of the anime than season 1 of the webtoon. So she definitely feels like a more whole character, and you kind of understand where she's coming from a bit more in the anime. I kind of preferred the more mysterious nature of her motives in the webtoon, but I have to say that the episode, and we'll talk about it later, where they really show what happened to Rachel when she first entered the tower and all of her thoughts and her conversation with Hadon, even though it's changed, it really fixed a lot of problems I had where there was too much mystery in the anime. And the mystery, by mystery in the anime, I mean they left a lot of things out, so there were just like a lot of open-ended questions. So I think it was handled well, but it's definitely different.
Yes, and now getting to the floor of test.
So just right before we go to the floor of test, actually, I want to just add on to the thing with the Black March when they're transitioning to the floor of test. So the reason the Black March kind of gives in the anime for helping Bam is that she finds him to be handsome. And while that's not entirely different in the webtoon, it is not really her main motivating factor behind it. She kind of asks him what he wants to climb the tower. Why does he need her power? And she wants to know, is it wealth, the jewel, riches? What does he want? And he just says Rachel, and they have a conversation about what is Rachel? Is it this jewel he's looking for? And he says, no, it's this girl. She's not even like the most pretty girl in the world, but she means so much to me. And she says that she kind of, he's her type, basically, not that he's handsome or cute or anything, but that she's his type of person, that she is someone she likes, so she'll lend him her power. So that was a subtle difference that I kind of found important, but it's not crucial to the plot or anything. I know they did like the parallel with the Black March helping Bam because he's handsome, with Yuri helping Bam because he's handsome, but it definitely is different in the webtoon.
Yeah, but I think there still is some he's attractive, but you're right, it's more than that in the webtoon, and there is that whole exchange. And they kind of hype up the Black March a little bit more in the anime than in the webtoon, and we see that in the Crown game. But first, Bam enters the floor of test. He's thrown. It's still in the first episode, which they I guess they want to just introduce Kun and Rock here, which they do. He's thrown into the floor of test. It's very immediate. I think they're just trying to go for how fast the tower changes, which I guess is true in the beginning, but like later you'll see that like people spend very long times in between each floor, so it's not always that abrupt.
Just to touch on that, the pacing, and I guess we'll have a broader conversation on pacing later, but the pacing of season 1 in the webtoon is kind of slow. It's a little bit of a slow drip, and you find out information more gradually, while the anime is kind of fast-paced for the duration, at least in my opinion, especially episode 1, which is why I'm bringing this up now. Episode 1 moves lightning fast opposed to the way it's delivered in the webtoon.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And mostly the first part of the second floor is accurate. There's a few things that I mentioned with Kun that I'll get to, and a few others, but for the most part it's accurate. So we open, the end of the episode is them in like a Mexican standoff, and then we open the second episode with them interacting. Kun, it's like developing their characters, and Kun kind of like walks away saying, I'll let you deal with this in the anime, and in the webtoon he actually takes Bam and they run, and then they're hiding. So they kind of added a little bit extra in the anime, which I mean I'm okay with. I don't care. I just always find it odd when sometimes they add stuff when they take other things away. But so Bam and Kun are talking. Kun sees the Black March and then immediately changes his tune. He gets aggressive and he says, "Who are you?" In the anime, I think he just asks, "Where'd you get the Black March?" But in the webtoon, he's kind of a little more perceptive than that. He doesn't need to ask where he gets the Black March. He knows that if you have the Black March, you cannot have taken it from Yuri. It was given. And to just have him ask like that kind of question, I thought was a little odd.
But yeah, it was definitely strange. In the webtoon, he knew it was the Black March, and he knew Bam was important or up to something. He didn't know why, of course, but he instantly recognized the Black March. He knew exactly what it was, and in the anime, he kind of knew what it was, but the way he approached Bam was different. He was kind of threatening to Bam more in the webtoon upon questioning him than just inquisitive like he was in the anime.
And yeah, it's just a subtle thing, and Bam refuses in the webtoon to tell him where he get it. Kun knows that it had to have come from Yuri Jihad. This is a known thing that she got it. She's very popular, and she's, I believe, the newest princess. They might say that.
She is the newest princess in the webtoon, I believe in the anime as well. And by newest princess, we don't mean the newest ranker princess who got a 13-month weapon.
She's the first one to get a 13-month weapon in a long time. That's said in both the webtoon and the anime in the first season. And so I believe in the webtoon, in the webtoon during the first floor, they talk a little bit about it because Evan says, like, you just got it.
So just to refresh and just to be clear, she's not the newest princess of Jihad. She is the first princess of Jihad, the newest princess of Jihad to get a 13-month series weapon in modern times.
Yeah, the timeline is very long in Tower of God. You'll see that, but we don't want to get into that right now. So they finish up the test. Rock. It's very similar the way things go down, and then they're now transported to the neck part of the testing floor, and just more little subtle differences of, like, in the webtoon, Rock is with them, and he's like being manipulated by Kun a little bit. And in the anime, he's kind of just shows up later. But what I want to talk about now, and I think you'll agree with me, is Rock. There's no chocolate bars in the webtoon.
No, the chocolate bar thing is a trope that was introduced just to make him more funny and almost like to sell merchandise of Rock, if I had to say. Just like to make him that fun character that kind of everyone likes. They do a similar thing to Shibisu. While Rock is a comic relief at moments, they strip him of a lot of his more serious moments. He almost serves like a father-like figure at times to both Kun and Bam, and that's not really seen as much. The chocolate bar thing is cute, and I did enjoy it, but he does have an obsession with something else in the webtoon. Again, it's not as much as the chocolate bar, but he does like bananas.
I thought it's better for merchandising. The way that they draw Rock when he's eating the banana, I think, is really funny. They always do that weird, like, innocent look. And, like, Kun's kind of, like, training him with chocolate bars to do whatever he wants. And they kind of just, like, use it all the time. It's just, like, it's very out of character that he would be manipulated that constantly, like, consistently.
Yeah, Rock is not that submissive. He is a good guy deep down, and that's why he listens to what Kun says, and that's why he listens to what Bam says. He's an equal member of the team, and he's kind of just relegated to this meme-like character in the anime, and he does have that quality in the webtoon, but it's just nowhere near that extreme.
Yeah, and I have a very big issue with something that they removed from him later, but that's not until after the game of tag test. So
yes.
Right now with the Shinsu barrier test, it's very similar. They change who Liraro attacks with the Shinsu.
Yeah, so can I bring that up really quick?
Yeah, I know it's a bigger issue to you than me.
Yeah, this bothers me a lot, and it's one of my biggest problems with the anime as a whole. They change the regulars who wind up passing the entire floor of test and go on to be able to climb the whole tower. So the first instance we see of this is the regular Levin, I believe his name is. He's the guy with the sniper that Rock encountered during the floor when they're lowering the number of regulars. I think floor 2, right? In the plains area, he kind of bends his sniper rifle so he can't shoot Bam. That guy eventually goes on to pass with the larger group after the test with the where Bam gets pushed. So he's not a major character going forward, and seeing as he didn't pass in the anime, I don't suppose that's a spoiler for going further on. We kind of never see that character again, but with Tower of God, you never really know who's going to show up again, so I just don't like it when something as major as, like, they passed and can climb the tower again and still exist in this area. Just him being gone like that, it kind of irked me a little bit.
Yeah, like, to me, he was gone, and I forgot about him to where I thought he didn't pass the test, so, like, I don't even know. But
he's not significant, but it's a change that bothers me enough that I think it warrants discussion at some point.
Well, he is the first character. This is just, I guess, kind of fun trivia. He's the first character in Tower of God to be hypocritical, where he complains about something being done to him that he just did, which is a running theme in Tower of God, where so he snipes the archer who shoots the person that's on top of Bam and saves Bam, but she was about to then shoot Bam. Then she gets sniped by Levin, whatever his name is. And then Rock comes over and takes his spot, and he's like complaining. And it's just like, you just murdered someone who wasn't looking at you, and this guy decided to just let you go. And then he gets so mad that Rock breaks his gun. But that's a consistent thing. Ho does it later. Ho is the orange skinned girl guy with the one horn who ends up killing him herself. And
Ho is a guy.
Yeah. And it's just this theme that I always, it's throughout Tower of God, and I think it's like perfect. Like these people, you can always tell like who is that's how I see the good guys and bad guys, even though it's very ambiguous about who's good and who's bad. When someone starts complaining about how things are unfair, why are they being punished for doing something that somebody else did and got away with? It's kind of like, oh my God, get over yourself. Even what's the old lady's name that like has like, she's not an old lady, but the girl who has the weird relationship with Shibisu. Remember, she doesn't pass the test. Is that her name?
Yes, the girl with the
she's
knife.
The one who gives him the knife and ends up leaving.
Yes, Serena.
She does it too, where it happens in both the webtoon and the anime, where she once Ho kills him herself. She's sitting next to her, going like, "I did all this. Isn't it unfair that like all this stuff has happened to us? Huh? Isn't that true?" And it's kind of like, no, you're not as strong. You're doing bad things when you don't have the ability to get away with it like the other people. And like complaining that you're not naturally endowed. It just looks like this self-pity thing that you'll see that none of like who I deem the good characters, the good guys, never do it, because they're aware of what the world is like, and it's like you're just gonna wallow in self-pity. So that's in both of them. That's one of my positives for both the anime and the webtoon.
Right. So there is a theme amongst certain characters of self-pity and woe is me, and if only I had XYZ that this character has, then I would be able to do XYZ. So that is a theme amongst select few characters, and I actually want to talk about Serena a bit more, but that's going to be a bit later when we get to her bigger moments. But yeah, I really just needed to mention Levin, and I'm going to mention a few other characters because I just don't understand the purpose of making them fail for other characters to pass. And it's just like a confusing change that was so unnecessary that I just don't get it.
And speaking of changes, here's the one that I dislike a lot, which happens right before they're about to take the room test. I think it might not have the same name as in the webtoon, but in the webtoon they just call it Han Sung-Yu's test. I think in the webtoon they just call it the door test.
This is the test with all the doors that you're referring to.
So when that episode starts, it has Kun remembering this tragic backstory that we have of his, where in the anime we're told like all these rumors that there was this Maria princess. Did Kun love her? Was he betrayed by her? All this stuff that's going on. So in the webtoon, he actually doesn't have that thought until he enters the test. So they enter the test, and then he starts thinking about these things, and it's much more subtle. There's only one little rumor where it's like they might have liked each other, and like, oh, maybe she was using him. And then someone after that says, no way that he was used. And they're like hyping him up like he's supposedly like this genius of the Kun clan. And there's all this backstory and stuff, but it's funny to me that they hype it up in the anime a little bit more, but then they take away a crucial scene, which he has with Rock later after the tag game, where Kun explains it from his point of view, what happened, and then we get a much less like biased point of view, since it's just all these rumors that he's remembering. And that what do you want to call him, the pink balloon guy that gives Kun the hint?
I think they just call him balloon guy or garbage bag guy. I forgot exactly what his name, but that's
if
literally
you're watching,
his name.
yeah, you know who it is. It's the weird pink guy that gives Kun the test. He says betrayed son of Kun, and then Kun jumps on him with a knife. In the webtoon, that never happens because it's not a known thing.
Yes, no one knows Kun's backstory that's outside of the Kun family. I don't even recall if Han Sung-Yu.
No, he does. I double checked. So Han Sung-Yu
Okay.
at the end of the test mentions like that he knew Kun's backstory, so he knew that the hint would be poison to him.
Right.
But it's a very subtle comment. In the anime, he like goes into it a little bit more. I think the webtoon is trying to show that like Han Sung Yu's just very knowledgeable, and the anime is trying to show that like what happened with Kun was like a big deal, which I don't think in the webtoon it's as big of a deal outside of him and his family.
Yeah.
But the anime hypes it up to make this like drama.
Yeah, I imagine they could have just removed that entire scene and just added some of the things I left out. It was unnecessary and almost confusing.
Which one?
Where they're talking about Kun's backstory at that point.
Oh, okay, yeah. I like the flashback, and I was okay with them moving it to the beginning just because of the way that they started the episode.
Like they could have moved it to the beginning, but I feel like it was just a little too long, and the relationship is still kind of confusing through the anime between him and Maria. And yes, like it gives you more of an insight into Kun, but I just did not see it as a necessary thing in that moment.
But like, so we'll get to it when we finish the tag game, which doesn't need to be talked about that much. Everything's very similar, and I like the way they do things. So like, we can jump ahead because like at this point we're just like looking at the differences and things that we like, things that we don't like, and so he passes the test, everything. So Then what happens after the test? It's the crown game. They accept the crown game. Then we kind of see like it ends with Bam seeing Rachel, and they end the episode kind of like on a cliffhanger. Like, is that Rachel? That doesn't happen in the webtoon. He doesn't see Rachel until she comes out of the cage, and he's like, "Is that her?"
Yes.
And he doesn't need to bribe Rock with chocolate bars. He kind of just says, "We're gonna wait." But the whole Anak thing I thought was really well done. Like, that was pretty accurate.
Yes, that was at base. The whole scene with Anak taking the crown and all of that was actually really well done. Very accurate, true as you're saying. There were some minor changes in the crown game itself, particularly how Kun fights and the way he antagonizes everyone to attack him on the throne. He doesn't really do that trick with his bag and the knives to beat anyone in combat. They kind of just do like an off-screen, he's holding a knife and the guy's on the floor kind of thing. But the changes are not anything really major. In the webtoon, basically, the way he antagonizes them shows more of his sadistical planning side. It's not just like, I'm going to antagonize you, then throw the crown, show it's fake. I forgot exactly the way it goes down, but it's definitely a bit more thought out than that.
Yeah, and then has like a bigger plan, but go on.
The other main change in the crown game, it's not even a change actually, it's just something that was left out, and I understand why. But right before the crown game, there's a scene where they're in the waiting room and Kun excuses himself to the bathroom, and in that we don't see what he does there, but later on it's revealed that the 3 people who he had hiding in his bag, that's when he lets them out. So it is like an added layer to his plan that you find out happens. When those 3 people come out to help them, that's how he explains how it went down. They were in his bag the whole time. He let them out over there. They didn't just like magically show up out of nowhere. They were in his bag the whole time. There was a moment he released them. It's not an important detail, but it's just like a minor thing that wasn't touched upon.
Did they not add that in the anime? I thought they did.
No, they said they were in his bag, but they didn't really like... There was no moment where they got out of his bag. They kind of just appeared. He's like, oh, they were here the whole time in my bag, and now they're there.
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's definitely weird, because even in the webtoon and the anime, I was always thinking, like, he promised them that he would help them get past the tests, and they would help him get past what he wanted, and it's none of those people passed.
Nope, one of them passed. One of them passed.
Was it the girl?
Nope, it was Blarogue. He's the dude with the weird yellow thing on his arm.
Yeah. I don't even remember seeing them later, but I guess, yeah.
They're another so he's another character like Levin, who does not really appear past season 1 at all. He's not important, but I guess that's a little spoilery, but no one really cares about Blarogue, so I'm sorry if you're a Blarogue fan. I think that's...
Blarogue fan.
No one says his name, so I don't really know how to pronounce him.
I didn't know his name, and I'm having trouble picturing what he looks
like.
Exactly.
So... Again, not important, really.
But
just another change.
The biggest change is when Bam freaks out. So we get to Bam's on the chair. Rachel's guarding him. What's her name? The princess and Dorsey and
Forgotten Dorsey.
Ghost. I think the big giant guy's name. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, Ghost. It's Ghost.
Are defending, and Rachel's standing right next to him. And then later, who we learn, Harwin, the red-haired girl, comes in her full bodysuit to attack Bam and is like therefore attacking Rachel. She hits Rachel. Bam freaks out. He jumps. All goes down the same way in the webtoon. What is different is in the webtoon, when Bam jumps on her, we kind of cut away. We see him like have a similar like he's thinking about Rachel. I think actually that's when he has the thought of Rachel having the hair pull.
That's
definitely
yeah,
when
actually,
it happens.
that's when it happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's when the hair pull thing happens, not earlier. And then we cut and we see Harwin has half her mask ripped off and her eye is bleeding. We don't get to see what happens.
It almost shows a cut to her eye, not that it's just
like
bleeding.
He yells and then all of a sudden like her face is just cut. We don't get to see what happens. We do later, but for right now we don't get to see what happens. Then Bam passes out. So he never like gets back up with the Black March and threatens to kill Harwin and is calmed down by the Black March. See, that's what I didn't like, because it's hyping up the Black March. The Black March wouldn't care if he killed Harwin or that Bam's losing control. And it's kind of like showing that Bam kind of just got angry and lost control, when in fact he in the webtoon he just screams and gets angry and doesn't know what he's doing just to protect Rachel.
Yeah.
Attacks her. So it's like the Shinsu attacks of its own volition, which is how Lee Ro describes it. And then later, through Lee Ro's perspective, we see that it was Bam screams, and then Shinsu just like goes at her and it hits, and he goes, it looked like the Shinsu was attacking on its own, like Bam wasn't doing anything. And this is a big deal because the way Bam does it in the anime, which I don't like, is it's this giant explosion of Shinsu, and it's like that kind of looks like he's controlling it and he's screaming and it just attacks, and it's just different from this pinpointed attack that's exactly on her when he screams, and then it stops as soon as she's incapacitated. It's much, I think, much better, more mysterious than, oh, look at this giant thing. It's like they had to like let the audience know that Bam is going to be really powerful.
So this is a huge change in my opinion as well. It might be the most significant change, and the explanation behind it is also pretty severe. In the webtoon, as we said, it's a small minor attack, and it's described as the Shinsu acting upon its own volition to protect Bam, which really doesn't make sense. Shinsu doesn't have a will. And then in the anime, they describe it as Bam becoming Shinsu itself, which to me doesn't make sense. And the depiction of it being this giant, powerful, golden wall of Shinsu it just does not exist in the webtoon in this way. And we might see Golden Shinsu later down the line, but it's certainly not from Bam and certainly not in this scene. So I don't get why it was depicted this way.
Yeah, and I don't understand why the Black March cares. So it's his Shinsu he's doing. He's not using the Black March. He's not trying to ignite the Black March. And he does the whole Shinsu thing, and then he gets up, which is very different, and then he attacks her with the Black March. And then the Black March is like, no, you've lost control. And it's like, how does she know that he lost control, and why does she care? I just didn't see it making any sense from a reader's point of view. And like if I was watching the anime, it'd be like, so the Black March like is like this big, it's like hyping her up to be something that I don't think she is.
Yeah, I mean, A, the Black March wouldn't care, and B, like she said she'd only help him once, and that's the second time now. So I just didn't understand why you needed to change that scene. Yes, you got to show he has explosive potential, but I mean, if you just emphasized where Lee Ro's like freaking out about how he was able to get away with hurting Harwin that way, I think that does it justice. Just like Shinsu doesn't behave in the way it does around Bam. So that just shows enough that he has this weird potential in him. Like his actions where he didn't get pushed by the wall after Lee Ro was pushing the regulars to demonstrate like you need to get through this wall to pass this portion of the test. That's another instance where it's just like, oh, he's special. You don't need this giant explosive power. Like a Rancor would probably be hurting if they were hit with that golden Shinsu beam. So
yeah, that was ridiculous.
He does not have that strength that early. Or at all. Like that's not one of his powers.
Yeah, I mean, I just like it. All I could say is like to like be devil's advocate is it was probably the anime people and the writers going like, this is the moment where we can like show off some anime, show off like potential of what's going to be coming down the line. it is weird for the plot and things that are going on, but I think that was the purpose of it. While I didn't like it, I think I can understand
I just think it was a like from artist perspective.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and it's great. Like it looks great. They played some awesome music around it. It's this awe-inspiring moment. Like, oh shit, this innocent kid isn't just an innocent kid. But none of the other regulars really react to Bam. Like if the regulars of the webtoon saw Bam do that attack, they would be freaked out around him. In the anime, no one cares that he did that. No one even brings it up. And that attack was so powerful. Haruon probably would have just died. Like she wouldn't have gotten away with one eye. It didn't make sense. Her injury proportional to what he did.
I mean, I can let it. Yeah, it was like giant explosion. Only half of the mask is hurt, but I would let it go more if they didn't do the Black March thing and he just passed out. And if, like you said, if they just said it looked like the Shinsu was attacking of its own volition instead of Bam became Shinsu.
Yeah, I mean, that line where Bam became Shinsu just threw me off so hard. So, I mean, that's my biggest problem. Not even the gold Shinsu crazy powerbomb thing, but just the explanation behind what he did was... I don't understand why.
Yeah, but whatever. Overall, still, I think overall the Crown game was good. It's that weird thing at the end. Like, let it slide because I don't think it's a deal breaker. Obviously, I love I love Tower of God too much to make a deal breaker. But there's basically no like just to explain, like we're sitting here rooting for the show to be as successful as possible. So when we're criticizing these things, it's because we think that it might have been received better had it been done the original way in certain instances.
And we're not even saying that it wasn't successful, because I think overall it was actually a really good anime, and anime onlys would certainly enjoy it. And I think if you watch the anime and then go on to reread it, you'll still enjoy it. But from a perspective of we've been reading it for years, and I've personally reread the story several times at this point, just the small points irk me. So they didn't change the overall plot anywhere, really, but just these things here and there, I question why these changes were made.
Yeah, so I guess this is a good point to say if you agree or disagree with any of the things we've been saying, you can write a comment. Maybe I'd like to be like, oh my god, everyone agrees with me, but I know that's not true. So like if you were a straight anime watcher and you love that scene, that's totally okay. I'd love to hear that you loved it, because that's really what I'm more worried about, is that people watching this being like, I don't like it. But if you're a straight anime fan and you love that, I'm like, great, that's fine. If you don't, I want you to know that this show is amazing, so it's worth getting invested in, because there's plenty of material along the way that's great. If you're a webtoon reader and you agreed with us or disagreed with us, that's fine too. And I guess you know what it's time for.
What's it time for?
Time to plug our sponsors.
We have sponsors.
No, we don't. But I love Triscuits, and I love Wheat Thins, and I love Nutri-Grain bars. None of them give me any money, and I'm okay with that.
You know what? I love them too, and I'm also okay with this.
And TripAdvisor. This show is not brought to you by TripAdvisor. They are not affiliated with us in any way.
In fact, we don't want them to be.
Though we love them.
We do love them.
But again, not affiliated and don't want to be. And that brings us to the end of part 1. We thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this. Please leave any comments, like and subscribe if you're interested. This is a new and up-and-coming channel. There will be a part 2 coming very soon. And thanks, everyone. Have a great day.